Right. This, as mentioned, this is definitely a partnership project between Landwise and the Future Farming Trust, but also with both Kraft Heinz, Waddies and McCain Foods as the two big processors locally, who are both heavily involved in the project, not just as co-funders, but day to day with helping us work out how to do things. And there's also involvement through Ruahapia Marae and through Nick Roskridge with iwi for Mataronga Māori, and the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, BASF and Hill Laboratories helping out. So it's very much even at that level a community thing, but it's bigger, much more community involvement than that. So I've got my name big on the talk here because I'm the one standing up, but it's very much Alex running the day-to-day stuff, and so if you really want to know something, ask Alex because she knows what's going on. But also David France and Phil Schofield from the Trust. So the four of us spend a lot of time together steering things, making sure stuff happens in a timely fashion and keeping the Ministry for Primary Industries happy. So what are we doing? It's a 6-year study, and in that time we hope to be able to see some differences. So we're incorporating Mataronga Māori through that, which for a bunch of honkies is actually a bit of a challenge, and we're still learning on that path, but very much interested in how that works within the system that we're running. We're looking at the effect of alternative management on carbon, as in carbon positive, but soil quality generally, the nutrient supply, water holding capacity, whether we need as many external inputs, but also profitability, with the idea that if we can stay in business this year and have a farm in really good condition in 20 years, we're probably on the right path. So why? Well, partly because we've been doing cropping at the microfarm for 10 years and can see soil quality going down a little bit, and that wasn't the idea of doing it. We were trying to maintain soil or go upwards, so what can we do differently? Also, our partners globally are both into regenerative agriculture. So McCain Foods has got a program where by 2030 they globally want all their farms practicing regenerative principles. And Kraft Heinz has got a program in our roots which is similar. The government's got Regenerating Aotearoa. And just going global again, as of yesterday, there were over 170 companies signed up to the Sustainable Agriculture Initiative. So that's huge companies, the Danones, the Nestles, the big ones, saying that we need to do this better. Our businesses rely on us looking after the soil and doing things better. So how? So at the microfarm we've set up 12 paddocks, which is 3 farm systems repeated 4 times, so we can do some maths and some statistics. The plots that we've got are all 90 metres long and 12 metres wide. That allows us to use conventional farm machinery, not white coat stuff, and I'll show you some more examples of that later on. So we have a science plan, and that's guided by a technical advisory group. So we've got plant and food research putting a lot of input into how to monitor crops, crop performance, and also soil quality, soil health. We've got land care Manaki Whenua looking in particular at the soil carbon and how to do that, but also working with us on the soil structural elements. Ag Research has had an input in a number of ways, including how to recognise different earthworms by name, and guidance around some of those other things, which is their specialty. The science team at the regional councils helped, and we've got consultants putting input into that as well. And one of the things we're saying, or that team's saying, is are the measurements that you're doing relevant, sufficient, are they defensible scientifically, and we want to know that they're practical and obviously affordable to do. And affordable for us is probably more expensive than you might want to do on a farm normally, but we have got some guidance on that. And we're using Soil Health Institute guidelines for some of the soil health monitoring, which they've done by looking at that as what's affordable on farm if you're trying to measure your soil quality. So there is some practical element to this. We also have an operations plan, so the crop management decisions with an operations advisory group, which is a little bit more flexible and open and changing than the technical advisory group. It depends a bit on the crops we're growing and things like that. The management we're using is 3 philosophies, and I'll talk about those in a minute, but it's not changing one thing here and one thing here and one thing there, or trying to say, did the fertiliser make a difference? It's of these 3 systems, when you run them, do the systems make a difference? So we can't tell you which part of that system is responsible for what. We just want to know if at the end of time the different systems gave different results. And again, we are asking, are the practices that we're using practical and sensible and defensible and all that sort of stuff? So One of Alex's first things when someone says do this, she says, can I do it on our plots? Can a farmer do it on 20 hectares? And if the answer is no to either of those, then we go back to the drawing board and ask again. So we won't spend too long on this, but we call our three farming systems conventional, which is very much the traditional, as in the last 50 years, but very high input. Give it everything, the gold-plated program, all the fertiliser, any cultivation it wants, all the products you want, but get really high yields out of it, and that proves to be relatively profitable. What's going on with the soil is debatable. At the other extreme, we've got the regenerative program, and here we're looking at applying the 5 core principles of regenerative farming, and we're trying to take a longer-term view, I guess, and saying if we look after the long-term soil health and plant health, does that look after us and bring it back in profit and everything else? And then in the middle, we've got one we call hybrid, and it's kind of a halfway house where we might cherry pick bits from one and bits for the other. So it might be what a farmer could do as a step towards a regenerative system, or just softening their sort of very intensive approach. So those are the systems we're trying to run. We started off with doing a lot of baseline sampling. I did do some of it, but I took the photo, so I'm not in it. But a lot of holes, taking cores down to 90 centimetres, doing a lot of work on those, sending them to the labs. A lot of VSA tests, people have talked about those today before, and they're a very, very powerful tool for understanding things. Alex is really good now at finding worms and counting them and getting better and better every time at identifying them. But Nicole Shon is the national expert on worms, and so any queries go to Nicole, and she gives guidance on that. But there's a whole lot of parameters, and I'm not going to go into them all in detail because we just haven't got time. But I will show you this picture here, which is the amount of carbon we had in the soil at the beginning of the program for all of the different blocks that we've got. And we had each block chopped in half. So we've got 24 columns there. The dark brown is the amount in the top 15, the tonnes of carbon in the top 15 centimetres of soil. The pale brown is the amount of carbon in the next 15 centimetres of soil, so the topsoil is those two really. But you'll see that in the 30 to 60 to 90, we've actually got a lot of carbon down there as well. And if we don't measure that, then we won't really know what's going on. You'll also see that the 5th and 6th columns are a little bit shorter than the others. And it's interesting that those two, one end of one of the treatments came up with lower soil carbon, and what we've been noticing recently is that the crops are coming up shorter as well. Now, we haven't identified quite what's going on there, but it's certainly a question for us to dig into more. So here's some pictures to show you that we use real tractors and real machines. And this was a sweet corn crop we grew with McCain Foods. And so fully commercial crop and applying different treatments. But you can see in there that we've cultivated and we've done various things to it. We've put on compost onto the regen system, and we've done all sorts of bits, and we did some harvesting. Now here's the story of the season. So we planted stuff and it germinated and it grew and it flowered and it looked good, and then we got Gabrielled. And despite Gabrielle's putting our entire crop underwater for a day or so, it actually came out all right and we got pretty good yields. In fact, for the time of planting, we planted just before Christmas, and it was a pretty rubbish season. Our crop yields were pretty good. But that Gabrielle thing did actually have a longer term impact. So this is just to show you a box plot to show you that we do science, but it says that we got a higher yield in the conventional, a lower one in the regen, and they were significantly different, but neither of them were significantly different to the hybrid treatment. But basically that lined up with the amount of available nitrogen for the crop. And sweet corn's a nitrogen-hungry crop, so that's probably the key driver there. Then we went into winter cover crops, and this is the 3 treatments, conventional, hybrid and regenerative. We had ryegrass in the first 2, and we grazed the conventional. We had oats, blue lupins and vetch in the regen, and we didn't graze it. Now, people into regen will know that that's back to front. We're meant to be reintroducing animals to the system. But conventional practice here is to run lambs on your grass over winter and get some more money, so that's conventional practice. And in the regen, we wanted to keep that cover crop, grow it bulky, and then plant into a mulch on the surface, because that would let us not need to use the herbicides the same and give us some other advantages as well. So we retained all of that crop and then we chopped it down and mulched it. But what we also, this is some work for growing tomatoes, and you can see there's some plant, it's actually a celery, I think, growing into some mulch. But that's what we were aiming for, and that was going to be a major part of our system. So our tomatoes got planted on the 26th of October, the other day. They get harvested in 135 days, and we're targeting 100 tonnes paid yield. Now, they're an extremely expensive crop to grow, so if you don't get a good yield, you're not going to make it. You've got to get the high yield to pay for all the costs you've done. And that typically means people put all the insurance into play. So they give it all the fertiliser, probably plus a bit. They give it all the sprays, and they take the conservative approach to making sure they've got enough on rather than cut back. And maybe that's part of the issue. So here's our systems. The conventional's being planted. The hybrid one we did strip till rather than full cultivation. And you'll see that our beautiful cover crops disappeared. So when we got in to do that, we discovered the soil was so hard after 2 years of wetness that if we'd planted tomatoes, they wouldn't have grown. And this is where pragma trumps dogma. And so rather than stick to what we'd planned of doing planting into the mulch, we said, no, the plants are not going to live. And last month has been the first time in 2 years where our soil's been dry enough to actually aerate it. Before that, if we took anything through it, it just smeared it and made it worse. So we had to bite the bullet on this, and we chopped our cover crop in, and now we're growing into quite a high residue that's been chopped into the soil. Now this is what we're aiming for, truckloads of tomatoes coming out and going to the factory. One of our constraints is that factory needs X tonnes of product going into its mouth every day, and so the whole industry is geared around getting crops ready for a certain day to feed a factory. And that means that the growers are doing things not on necessarily the best day in terms of soil moisture for the paddock or the best day for other reasons, but the day that they need to get those plants established so that they're ripe on the right day so that the factory can be run efficiently. And that's one of the big constraints of the whole sector. So if you'd like some more information on it, you can contact Alex or contact me. And again, just like to really recognise the partners that we've got, especially Philip and Dave, who are with us all the way through. Pohatu Paku from Ruahapia Marae and Nick Roskridge. And the technical advisory team that we've got, the operations advisory team, but the McCain field staff and the Waddies field staff have been 120% into the project. And they're very, very interested in knowing what the outcomes are and have really thrown their time and resources into the project. So we've had tractors from here to Africa all over our place, and we had the full Waddies planting team in there planting the crop. There were more tractors than people than you can shake a stick at. And the contractors, the Mike Kittles, the Patrick Nicoles, who come in and they play around with our silly little paddocks because they can see that it's for industry good and probably society good. So that's me. Thank you.